Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Discussing a Murderer. This is Jeff Jones. With me today is a partial panel, and we will get to greeting them right away. And we'll start at the top, and we will welcome Kelly first. Welcome, Kelly. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's well, and I'm ready for today.
All right, let's get to it. And Dr. Silkman, also to you, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Jeff. It's great to be back. And I'd like to say hi to everyone on the panel and everyone in chat. It's great. Let's get on with it, guys.
Let's get on with it. And or the other way that we sometimes refer to it here is on to the next. So let's talk to on to the next himself, Big Jeff. Welcome back, Big Jeff. How are you doing? Good evening.
Hey Jeff, how you doing today? I'm doing great. The air quality here in New England is a little bit bad today because it's one of two things. It's either the wildfires in Canada or the massive destruction of evidence in Manitowoc. I'm not sure which of those two it is, but it's certainly one of them, or maybe a combination of both. And I think if we investigate further, we'll be able to figure out what exactly that is. So I'm looking forward to this episode. It's a good episode so far. So let's see if we can make a little progress and get to it.
I came upon this card that had all these branches on the top of it and leaning against it, and there was a old hood of a car leaning up against it, and it was kind of bluish green. And I thought, this is really strange. This is really strange. And it looked like a little SUV that like I was looking for, a RAV4 Toyota SUV. And I went around to the back of the vehicle. And again, there were branches leaning up against it. And I noticed that it said RAV4. Well, my heart started going, oh my goodness, maybe this is it.
It's amazing how Mr. Kratz had to stop Pam Sturm. I think you can clearly see that she is way, way overacting her part. It sounds incredibly rehearsed. It doesn't sound natural. And I think she's trying to elicit the sympathy of the jury and the judge. She knows that she went too far. Have a look at the smile and the grin on her face. And what is extraordinary here is the incredible amount of extra detail she mentions about the RAV4 that's really irrelevant. She gives all this extraordinary detail, like, it was hidden. It had branches. It had a hood, implying that nasty man, Stephen Avery, was trying to disguise the RAV4, but Pam somehow was able to find it.
I just want to say that I completely agree. There's like this over the top kind of sense of the way she's articulating it. The only thing that I will say, you know, and I'm no body expert, so I'm not going to even pretend I am, but just, observations from a human to a human that uses body language every day. Um, Even though how she's describing details, which is just way too many, they are matching her body language when she's talking about it. If you watch her hands, they're matching what she says. Like when she talks about things being over the car, she's using her hands to demonstrate that things were over the car. It's just, and so in a sense, we all know that's a true baseline in terms of we do know that's how the car was allegedly found. So it's interesting to see her using the correct gestures to relate to what she witnessed. But again, it's too much detail. It's definitely like a rehearsed, you know, statement that she's making here.
Well, I hope everybody was able to watch the Man Miracles podcast that we did, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And the the fact that it takes her about 20 minutes to find the RAV4 was voted, I think, nearly unanimously by the audience as actually qualifying as a miracle, and it's no coincidence. I think the fact that she is as both Kelly and Dr. Silkman eloquently put, that she is way overacting, and there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why she had to invoke the Lord, right? When she said, "I think God led me to it," because there's no other way, right? There's no other way it could have happened other than a divine miracle. So this whole corniness that we're watching really does fit the miracle narrative, and really is kind of an expose on how ludicrous her story is. So I don't think I've added anything to but.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'll try to add something if I can there, Big Jeff, and that is that my take is that it was like she was telling a campfire story, and she's trying to dramatize it to make the kids get excited and interesting in the story. And I just, for me, that's how I read it. And there's one other little point, well, maybe a little point or maybe a bigger. And I just have a question for everybody in the audience and on the panel is, what do you make of that pin on her lapel? I took a closer shot, and I just want you guys to tell me, what does it look like to you?
I think it's probably a badge straight from the Pope. What do you reckon, guys? I reckon it's straight from the Pope.
It does look like
that one
a
up in
badge.
Vatican City, yeah.
I mean, it really does look like some kind of a badge, right? Is that her PI?
What are the
badge?
beefeaters? The beefeaters, is that what they're called in the Vatican? the Vatican Guard.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, she regards herself as the chosen one, right? Because as Big Jeff has got that incredible picture behind him, you think about it, right? All the prior searches, including law enforcement, they found nothing in regards to Teresa Halbach, absolutely nothing. And Ryan Hilligus and Scott Blowdorn, they were organizing the searches, and that day, and I think the day prior, they got all the flyers out, the missing person posters everywhere, and they were organizing searches. And think about it, Pam Sturm comes along the scene very, very late after all the other searches have gone, and she demands to go to the Avery salvage yard, right? Demands. And remember Big Jeff, remember Kelly and Jeff, the sudden phone call from Wiegert to Remiker, the change in plans. And that change in plans was that Sheriff Pagel wanted to use the citizen searchers to go onto the Avery salvage yard to search. However, Pam Sturm and Nicole, they obviously didn't read the script, and they went in there way too early. Because remember, what did Ryan Hilligus give and Scott Blowdorn give only to Pam? A map,
a map, a camera,
a personal camera, Scott Blowdorn. But
Pagel's phone number
is Sheriff Pagel's direct phone number. And Ryan Hilligus had to admit that he had given neither a camera or a direct number to any of the other searchers. To me, I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little bit paranoid doing these episodes, but it seems to me that this is an example of foreknowledge. In other words, Pam Sturm knew precisely where the RAV4 was. And if you have a look at it from an aerial point of view, she walked directly to the RAV4 and ignored 99.99% of the vehicles in the salvage yard. Now, I tell you what, if Pam finds 2 additional vehicles, she can go to the Vatican and become Saint Pam Sturm. Right, guys? You need 3 miracles.
The thing is, I think the discovery maybe of the AudioVox phone really is, she's only going to discover one more now. And then
one more.
She's well on her way.
And yep, then she'll have 2 badges.
That's right.
You know,
2 badges.
Some kind of popped out for me while we were sitting here talking about Sheriff Pagel and these phone calls that he's making. And Big Jeff, you probably like this one. If you harken back to 1985 case, in the civil suit depositions, what are they asking Big Jeff? Aren't they saying, oh, so the sheriff was really involved in this one, wasn't he? More than usual, wasn't he? These are the questions that were asked in the civil suit. And it just hit me kind of just a second ago when you're hearing, so Pagel's calling them, and then Pagel's giving his phone number to this person, and Pagel, the boss, has a change of plans. Pagel, right? And so I go, so what do you think about that, Big Jeff? Did I kind of find a parallel there?
You make a great point, because I actually hadn't considered that before, because as part of the depositions, they also, ask other people like Deb Strauss and some of the people who work in the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office. The question that you're getting at, which is how typical is it that the sheriff get deeply involved in a case? And it's extremely atypical. That he has his people that he assigns, and you're right that Pagel is getting awfully involved comparatively in this case. Now he has assigned Wiegert as being the lead investigator, whereas Kasurek kind of became the lead investigator in the Penny Bernstein case, which is really the atypical. But he is injecting himself an unusual amount with this change of plans business and everything else. So you make a great point there, Jeff. I had never considered that.
Yep.
That's gold.
The parallels are remarkable because Tom Kasurek personally knew the Bernsteins. Tom Kasurek personally became involved in that investigation back in 1985, which is unusual. And Sheriff Pagel personally knew the Horbach family, although he denied knowing Teresa Horbach. And Sheriff Pagel, you must remember, one day after she was reported missing on November the 4th, he's in an aeroplane with Baldwin flying over the Avery salvage yard and surrounding properties. This is the sheriff himself going on an aeroplane, right? Which is remarkable. He could have assigned that to anybody else, but he personally took the lead in this case. So it's interesting. The parallels are frightening when you think about it. In both cases, 1985, 2005, as Big Jeff alluded to, and also Jeff, you have the sheriff being personally involved. And what's the common denominator here? Stephen Avery.
I actually listened to that call about 2 weeks ago. I totally had I was just listening to calls, and it came up to that whole change of plans. I have to slip in something here. It's not favorable, but it balances out. There was, in a sense, a little slight editing in Making a Murderer when it comes to that part, because when you listen to it as in its entirety, it's not just focused on the plans changing towards Stephen. They actually then address, so they state, there's been a change of plans, we're going to go back to Stephen Avery's and the Zippers. And then they take a minute out to talk about how they're actually laughing at George Zipper and how he's going to react, because how angry and pissy he's been that they keep going over there and talking to him. So I just wanted to slip that in, because I had forgotten that there was that second part to that. And I just wanted to go back to the Pam bit. I was thinking about what I think it was Jeff Jones who kind of ended in her watching Pam on the stand here, and a word popped out to me, and he kind of summed it up. But I realized what she's doing to the jury, and she's trying to be personable. She's trying to become this, someone that they can connect to, think she's sweet, she's not a liar. She's just trying to make that connection. But again, people that do that sometimes, who really try to become personable, it's not received well, because it's this sense of fakeness at the same time.
Sorry.
Did you attempt to verify the identification of this vehicle?
Yes.
And how was that done?
My daughter, Nicole, brought her cell phone along. And I should back up. Ryan gave us a direct line to Sheriff Pagel in case we found something.
Denny specifically addresses establishing opportunity if you can establish that someone planted evidence. So at this point, Mr. Hillegas is still on our list. Investigator Fossbender documented in the police report that Kelly Pitson, Teresa's best friend, told him that Ryan Hillegas had Teresa's day planner when they all met at Teresa's residence on November 3rd. So we started looking at Teresa's day planner. It's got some writing on it that caught our attention. So we got Teresa's new phone records, and we noticed that Denise Coakley has talked to Teresa at around 11:30 on the 31st and said, I'd like to set up an appointment with you on Tuesday, November the 1st at noon. And Denise said, when I talked to Teresa, she said, oh, I'm driving. Let me pull over and jot this down. So Teresa pulls over and she jots down Denise noon on November 1st. Okay, so she's in her car. Then we discover that Steve Speckman calls Teresa just about an hour after Denise's call. Okay, so it's around 12:45. And he tells her that he's got a couple vehicles he wants her to photograph. So Teresa jots down Steve and Sheboygan and then the vehicles and his phone number, and he confirms that she's driving in her car. It's now 12:45, okay? And so just reconstructing the time frames in which she arrived at her next appointments. There isn't time for her to have gone all the way back to her house with the day planner, left it at her house, and then left again. The schedule's too tight for her to arrive at Schmidt's. Scott Bladorn said that
So Jeff,
There's a lot.
there's a lot to unpack here, and for what I'm about to say, I give credit to Mystic Jinx. I've had conversations with her extensively about the correlation between the phone records and the computer search records, and I can't remember who is the one who FOIA'd the computer search records. I forget her name. Dan, I wish. That's what happens when you get old and senile. You forget things that you should remember. So I wish I could give her the credit that she deserves for this. But according to the computer records, Teresa, at the time of that first phone call, is indeed, searching Yahoo or Google Maps to be able to determine directions to where she's going. So it's not clear to me. Well, a couple things aren't clear to me. First is, I think that of course, of all days, it happens to be daylight savings time, right? This is the day the clock switch, right? So in a matter of an hour, could be something, could be everything, could be nothing, right? But assuming that the clocks adjusted properly, which they did on all PCs back then, so I don't see why they wouldn't. Why is it that Teresa is searching and doing computer searches for maps to where she's going at that time, and telling somebody that she's in the car driving? Why would she just lie like that? I don't really understand, why those two things are true. But it seems to me that the computer records do bear an important piece of evidence in this case that might point to the fact that she was not driving and would not have had to return to drop off the day planner, back at the house. She might have just left it after she jotted that down, if indeed she was doing computer searches at the time. Why she said she was driving when she wasn't, I have no idea. but so the computer searches do need to be reconciled somehow with the phone records, and I can't think of anything that would necessarily debunk the computer searches. So I have to go with the fact that that there's something that needs at minimally deeper investigation. And what do you trust the computer? I don't necessarily see the computer making a mistake on those records, nor necessarily anybody being smart enough, especially if the state isn't pointing it out, right? To have sort of gone in and manipulated the time on the records. So yeah, I'm not sure, Kelly, if you were going to bring up something along the same lines, but that's
Yeah,
kind of where I'm at.
you definitely kind of summed up everything for me. I was going to say kind of the same thing. The other thing is, if I remember correctly, and it's been a little while since I have really gone back and reviewed all this, the fact that I believe it was Scott who found the actual day planner first. And the reason why people kind of established that is because you see that he starts making phone calls from the day planner on his records first. So he's seen it, he started calling, and then you see this where he then calls Ryan. So Ryan's clearly not with him because he's calling Ryan and obviously telling Ryan. And then there's a phone call from Ryan to Kelly, and then Kelly back to Ryan, then Ryan to Scott. I'm not 100% sure that's the triangle, how in the terms of the pattern, but there is like a triangle there where you see this contact come out from that, and then the phone calls straight from Scott's phone to the people on the planner. So clearly it establishes by face value that Scott and Ryan aren't together at that point. So it looks like Scott's found it. Second to that is, like you said, the computer searches. It appears she's actually sitting at home. She's not actually driving. It contradicts the phone, not contradicts the phone records. It contradicts, in a sense, the witnesses stating that they believe she was driving, or that she had said that they were driving. Mystic Jinx has always been very vocal in terms of she has a suspect of her own, and that is a gentleman that we're watching around now. And she has openly said that, unfortunately, this kind of side of it she's had to let go because it doesn't fit. But like you said, it's always room for more investigation. That's just as simple as that. The only other thing I really kind of wanted to touch base on, which I thought it was a little bit to unpack, was the fact that the Denise situation, which I do find interesting, and it's not about whether she was driving or not. It was the fact that she booked an appointment the very next day. And what do we know about that? Well, we know in the report that she ended up going to the studio on the 1st at noon. And Teresa, and she waited and she waited. And she states that Teresa's co-worker, boss, Tom Pierce, ends up going in there and going up to her and asking, what is she okay? And he addresses her and looks after her. Now, I don't know how much you put into that, but the only thing that I kind of find interesting about that is everyone addresses, especially Tom Pierce, that Teresa was a very professional, very career-driven person who was trying to reach her goals and gain a business of her own, because that's how she was going into a new business, a new studio. And yet no one tried to call her. Where's the phone call to say, hey, you've got your appointment here. This is a booked appointment. But instead, I'm not saying that it means Tom had anything to do with it, but there's just that no one rang her to let her know, courtesy, that you've got an appointment. Your client's been waiting here for over 30, 40 minutes now. Where are you? And he took over the situation and he helped her and gave her what she was there for, or whatever it was. Yet he still didn't ring her straight then and be like, hey, did you forget? Like, is everything okay? Just, I think that's just something interesting that we keep at the back of our mind, because it doesn't have a reflection so much on Tom. Does it have more of a reflection on Teresa? We've been given this idea that this lady was, this woman was professional, that, and then this is a bit in contrast to what she's projecting when she's not apparently rocking up to her own clients and no one questions her about it.
You look at the day planner. Is there anything written on that day planner that suggests that Teresa Halbach had the day planner with her on the road, or is everything on that day planner consistent that she had left it behind near her computer? Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So my point is the day planner just a red herring?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Because majority of it was in print form, wasn't it, from the night before?
Correct.
Yeah, I believe the schedule program was on her Palm Pilot, and that is actually a printout, of whatever she had recorded previously on her like a hard copy. And she was adding to it. So yeah, I don't. That's the I agree that's the 100% question we should be asking. Apologize for interrupting.
Because on the bottom of the day planner, it's got the 30th of the 10th at 10:29 p.m. So she had printed that out the night before, and she would have likely added those comments on the 31st. So the question is, there's been a lot of controversy whether she actually had enough time to go home, drop the day planner off, and then continue her journey, or whether Teresa, in actual fact, had left that day planner behind on her computer desk and she used the Palm Pilot to take with her, right? So again, it goes to show you've got to be very, very careful when you're making these potential assumptions where they may not be true, because this firmly, and I think I know what you're talking about, Kelly, this firmly put the spotlight on Ryan Hilligus, right? As, how the hell did he come in contact with Teresa Halbach's day planner? So the controversy is, well, if the day planner was in the RAV4, how did Ryan Hilligus get access to it? But the reality is that day planner could have just been left behind on the computer desk. Right, guys? Do you agree?
Oh, you summed that up perfectly, to be quite honest with you.
Thank you.
And just because I mentioned it before, I did remember one person I know who, back, I think it was in 2019, FOIA'd the computer records, and her name was Adrian Gonzalez. So yes, thanks to her for doing that. That's not to say that there's been a lot of multiple FOIAs in this case. So if somebody else did it, and Mr. Jinks information was derived from that other information that somebody else FOIA'd, I apologize for making that error, but I'm certainly aware of Adrian doing it. I don't think she's following the case much anymore, but shout out Adrian in case you are.
He found the day planner at Teresa Halbach's residence, and that it was from the Outlook program on the computer. And it was before Teresa wrote on it, when she was out on the road talking to Denise Coakley and Speckman, and drove to Schmidt's. So she's at the Schmidt's house, and then she goes to the Zippers, and then she goes on to the Avery's. Her day planner is in the car with her because she never goes back home. There isn't time. So how does Ryan Hilligus get this piece of paper unless he has accessed Teresa's car after she's been to the Avery's? So if you talk about a Denny link to the crime, when you've got a document that you can show was in the victim's car at the time of the murder and is in the possession of a witness, that's about as good a link as you could get to the crime. That's why he won't talk to us. We've been back to his place twice, okay? He's not going to talk because he's involved, most likely, in moving the car, in obstruction.
Does anyone here wish that Ryan Hilligus had just simply spoken to Kathleen Zorner or one of her associates just to clear that day planner situation up?
I find it hard to like put myself in the feet of Ryan Hilligus. If he is like Mike Holbach and believes that we love the cops and the cops got the right guy, then I don't want to talk or help his post-conviction lawyer at all. I don't want to give him anything that might undo this conviction that got the guy who murdered my ex-girlfriend. And so I think that it's only fair and balanced. Maybe Kel back me up on this one to say, you know, it's hard to put your feet in Ryan Hilgus's position. Would I have preferred it? Absolutely. I would have preferred to have him talk to Kathleen Zellner and give us more information, no doubt. But I think I wanted to throw my little balance in there to just, it's hard to get inside people's heads. And we don't really know, does Ryan just 100% believe the story that Ken Kratz and company gave? I mean, we don't really know.
Well, my opinion is that people who don't have anything to hide don't keep on hiding things. And, you know, I do sort of agree that there's always a chance that if you open your mouth, you'll put your foot in it. But typically, you know, telling the truth, if you know, if you have if there's 100% truth and you're confident in your, you know, ability to tell it, and, you know, there's no reason to be suspected, and I don't see any reason why he just can't clear the air and say, "Hey, look, it was on her desk." I don't know anything about anything else about anything, any affidavit that Kathleen Zellner might have had, but it was on her desk. And there it was, and so I started making calls. So, but the fact of the matter is that that there's a lot of other fishy stuff associated with Ryan, like quote unquote guessing Teresa's password. You know, what is it going to turn out that he had that password for much longer? Was he stalking her? You know, he was kind of he can't remember you know, whether it was morning, noon, or night the last time he saw her. He dropped something off at the apartment for his friend Scott. He couldn't remember what that thing was. You know, there's just a lot of fishy stuff that's going on with Ryan. So, you know, probably it's just best to keep your trap shut if you don't want to be truthful. And it's clear that he doesn't want to be truthful about some of those other things. For what reason, I can't tell you.
Look, I 100% agree with you, Big Jeff. It's sort of like the thin edge of the wedge, because if he opens up his mouth, then potentially he could be asked a couple of very interesting follow-up questions. And we mustn't forget one very important aspect. He was the lead coordinator of the search teams, right? And guess who came up to him in the early hours of Saturday morning? And Pam and Nicole Sturm, who wanted to go directly to the Avery salvage yard. And it was Ryan that handed over the map, the camera, and also the direct phone number to Sheriff Pagel, which means that he has a direct connection with Pam Sturm, the person who found the RAV4. Now, if we're saying that we're very suspicious, that we don't believe it was an act of God or the Holy Spirit, then that now puts Ryan Hilligus in a very compromising position. Because the other thing that isn't really mentioned a lot was that Sheriff Pagel and I believe it was either Uyghur or Diedring were at the house on Saturday morning sending a test fax. So Pagel rolls up at around 8:30. Pam Sturm rolls up at about 9 o'clock. So the question is, was Sheriff Pagel still in the home when Pam Sturm rolls up? So you've got a very interesting lineage here, guys. I'm not saying anything nefarious took place, but you've got the sheriff, Pagel. you've got Ryan Hilligus, and you've got Pam Sturm potentially all in the same spot. Now, when you look at what Pam actually accomplished, it's remarkable, right? So hence, if I was Ryan, I wouldn't be talking to Kathleen Zellner either, because if you answer one question, potentially, as Big Jeff alluded to, it could put you in a very uncomfortable state.
Yeah, I mean, from a legal perspective, it was actually very important to the sheriff's office and probably to Mr. Kratz that the citizen searches remain independent of the police, because if somehow it could be shown that the police guided the searchers there, or they were acting as agents of the police rather than completely independent citizens, then all of a sudden you need a warrant to enter the property, right? John Q. Citizen can do whatever he wants and ask her all for permission and go on. But if you're doing, but suddenly if you're doing it as an agent of the police, right? If Uyghur was there saying, hey, we're going to go on there, then that's a big deal. That's a big difference. So it was very, very important from a legal perspective that citizen search remain independent. And you can even hear it on the dispatch. Oh, we don't have anything to do with that. If you want to, get hooked up with that, here's Ryan's phone number. So yeah, that was critical for them to not inject themselves into. But the fact that Dr. Silkman would just said, the fact that Pagel and Wiegert were there in the morning doing test faxes, that's kind of, is this something they were trying to hide? I mean, the rabbit hole theory that I've heard here is that that the RAV4 actually was sighted on the Avery salvage yard on the flyover. They were afraid that might be deemed an illegal search, so they needed somebody to quote unquote find it. They enlisted Ryan and Pam Sturm to pull off this elaborate contrived thing, knowing full well, that they were going to find it there, but they needed to divorce it from any unwarranted police action. That's the rabbit hole theory there. I don't know whether to believe that or not, but just so we get all the theories on the table.
100% correct. I read, in fact, we're actually doing this very, very section in Reading with the Crew. And so I read all the pre-trial and trial testimonies, and you're 100% correct, Big Jeff. Tom Fallon wanted to ensure, because he asked a lot of questions and a lot of times to Ryan Hilligus, were you involved with the police? No. Were they at your house? No. Did they tell you what to do? No. So it was always one step removed from the finding of the RAV4. They knew that it would have looked really, really nefarious if there was a direct link between law enforcement, Ryan Hilligus, and Pam Sturm, right? So they tried their absolute utmost to make sure that there was no direct connection. Yet we have Sheriff Pagel and other officers who are always at Teresa's place, asking for belongings, looking for forensic evidence, sending off a test fax on that very morning. And you've got Ryan who says, no, I handed Pam Sturm just a normal map. Oh, by the way, we gave her a camera and a direct number to Sheriff Pagel. And it's very interesting that Ryan stated that all the investigators and law enforcement officers gave him their phone number, right? And what did Ryan Hilligus say? Well, at that area, referring to the salvage yard, your cell phone reception is really crappy. So he stated that if you wanted to get out a call really quick, it's probably best to directly call the sheriff, right? So that was his argument of why he gave only Pam the direct number to Sheriff Pagel. But Big Jeff is correct. The state were at great pains to make sure that law enforcement had nothing to do with the citizen searches. And yet, remarkably, what does Pagel want to do on Saturday morning, November the 5th? He wants to use the citizen searches That morning, yes, and Kelly is correct, not only to talk to Stephen, but to re-talk back to George Zipperer, right? But he obviously wanted to use the citizen searchers to help search the Avery salvage yard. So they were trying to keep at arm's length, but it's pretty obvious that something really bizarre happened because Pam, I believe, likely received a tip. I don't know who gave her that tip because both her and Nicole literally walked straight towards the RAV4.
How much room can I get and when?
Right now, 884 is available to 11.
Oh, that's good.
And then you want 884?
Yeah, and then I'll come back. What do you think at 11?
At 11, I would give you 836 all the way till 2:30.
Perfect. I'm going to prepare for this argument the same way I prepared for the last one. A lot of research, a lot of studying, and a lot of practice rounds, including practice rounds that we've arranged with our students acting as the judges, and practice rounds that we've arranged with national experts in these areas of the law acting as judges.
And we are seeking the guidance of lawyers who are very experienced in the Seventh Circuit, including former clerks of the Seventh Circuit, to get as close of a sense of the mindset of the judges that Laura is going to face. It's the closest thing you can get to a Supreme Court argument, in the sense that there are 9 Supreme Court justices, and here there will be 7 Seventh Circuit judges. So as someone who is arguing before the en banc panel, it's more challenging. You know, you have to rotate your head more from left to right, and you have to field questions from a larger group of justices. In preparing for the argument, it's also harder to do because you have to try to read and understand the decisions of each one of these judges and anticipate the kinds of questions that they may ask.
Jeff, isn't it incredible, just as an observation, the incredible mountain that one must climb in order to seek justice, because the Attorney General, Brad Schimmel, refused to believe or accept the umpire's decision the first time round, right? So it's amazing that Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen have to now essentially redo what they were able to successfully do the first time round. What an incredible impediment. Not only that, what an incredible, it is in essence, I don't know what the others think on the panel and in chat, it's a disincentive to try again, isn't it? That's what it is. It's a roadblock to say, guys, it's now, your job has now become even harder, which is crazy.
The part of it that I don't really understand is that, and maybe I'm wrong, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the way that they described it, maybe it was in a previous, maybe it was the last episode, or maybe it was well before that, was that when the en banc panel decided to hear the whole thing, that the 3-judge panel decision was vacated. And I think so was the 1-judge decision, because that's why Brenton had to stay in prison, because those previous decisions were vacated in lieu of the en banc proceeding. And the fundamental fairness of that, or the fundamental unfairness of that, just strikes me and rubs me the wrong way. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that was the way that they explained it. That just adds to what Dr. Silkman just said about how this is completely disincentivizing, right? What do you have to do to win if they can just pull the rug out from you, through the sort of snap of the fingers. Now, this is a person's life we're dealing with. This is not, you know, this is not whether or not you can put up a statue or something like that. This is somebody's life that's been wrongfully taken by corrupt officials, and here we go again. I'm in an iPad breaking moment. Unfortunately, I don't have one, so I'm just going to stop here because I'm getting aggravated.
But the reality is, this is a system that exists in the United States. I'm not sure elsewhere, right? And to me, I could be wrong, but really, what this amounts to me is a protection of the verdicts. So, when you have your day in court, and the judge and the jury find you guilty, are you then meant to just accept it, right? And just accept the sentence? So when you have all these post-conviction appeals, and Judge Duffin voted favorably for Brendan Dassey, saying that his confession on the, forgot the exact date, was a coerced confession and it has to be thrown out. And then the Attorney General, Brad Schimmel, was not very happy with that. So they go the 3-panel en banc panel. 2 judges were favorable for Brendan Dassey, right? Now, they had the chance then and then. When you think about it, you've got an independent judge, Judge Duffin. You've got 2 independent judges on the 3-panel, all voted that Brendan Dassey should be released. You can't use that coerced confession. That's 3 out of 4 when you think about it, Judge Duffin and the 2 other judges. And yet the Attorney General comes on TV and says, we've got to think of the Halbach family. And as a consequence of that, they now go to the full 7 panel. Now, if you're Laura Nyrider and Stephen Drizzen, you must be extremely deflated, right, guys? You now have to essentially have the same arguments in front of now 7 judges. Even though you've done all the hard work prior to that, it's just been flushed down the toilet. Now, guys, I don't know, but to me, this is a really bizarre system that's present in the United States. I could be wrong here, guys. I apologize.
Well, Jack 61 said many times that, and I agree with him. And again, we're not lawyers, so we're just about one tiny step above Marquette Law School here with our analyses. Just that
Big Jeff, nice
there's
one.
just it just doesn't make any sense that they can sometimes invoke this the 7 judge panel. It just doesn't make any sense that you can do it whenever you goddamn well please if you don't like the decision of the 3-judge panel. It's just wrong. I agree, Tony. There's just no explaining.
Well, Big Jeff, it means that the state has always got the last say, correct? The state has the last play. So it's a rebuttal of a rebuttal, right? And so hence, in a way, the state can be standing back and waiting for and in air quotes, the correct decision to be made. And the state has got so many avenues that Brendan Dassey and his attorneys, they've run out of avenues because they now can't go to the federal court. Remember, the federal court didn't want to look at it. So it has stopped, the buck has stopped right there.
And the Supreme Court didn't want to look at it, is what you mean, and that the federal court is the one looking at it right now. Yeah.
We all understand that the role of an appeals court is to get it right. And if it gets it wrong, then it will be fixed down the road in the system. That's the belief that we all have in the system. If some court gets it wrong, another court is going to come along and set it right. And that's the shocking thing about EDTA. Federal courts can only grant relief if a state court was unreasonably wrong, was so wrong that no other judge, no other fair-minded judge could possibly agree with the state court. That's an incredibly high bar.
Brendan deserves justice, and he didn't get it in the state courts of Wisconsin. I hope we're able to deliver justice to him. Because if we're not, and I don't want to think this, I won't be alive when Brendan gets out of prison. It's very unlikely I'll be alive when Brendan gets out of prison. If I am, I'll be in my late 80s. And I don't want to think about that. We need to get to 4 votes to keep Judge Duffin's opinion in place. And the question is, can we win the hearts and minds of enough other judges in order to prevail?
Oral argument is waived if the court has no questions after reading your brief. So if you've got oral arguments, there are really serious questions that the court wants answered. The key to winning any case is your grasp of the facts. And that's what will shift a judge to your position if it was something they just did not realize. And a lot of attorneys, you know, they get so bogged down in the case law. That's not where the challenge is. The challenge is how you present the story.
We were here in February when both sides argued in front of that 3-judge panel, which eventually denied the state's request to reverse Brendan Dassey's overturned conviction. Now, much like back in February, both sides will be given a set amount of time, 30 minutes, to argue their case. There is no timeline, however, on when a decision will be made. For now, we're live in Chicago. Emily Matesic, Action 2 News.
Directions to 55 East Monroe, Chicago. It's an hour and 10 minutes, 22 miles.
Wow.
Crazy.
You know, I wish Brendan could be here.
It'd be nice if they'd have brought him down.
Yeah. Then the judges could actually see him and, you know, judge by himself, you know.
The 7th Circuit Court of Appeals will hear arguments starting at 10 o'clock this morning. Their decision could mean freedom for Brendan Dassey.
How far do we got to go yet?
We must be getting close to downtown, huh?
7 miles.
34 minutes.
We're more than halfway there. That's good.
Or is there a highway to jump on right here? Something? No.
Brendan's going to get out before we get to court.
Yeah.
He's going to beat us home. How about that?
It probably would.
Go inside and
Can I just make a comment?
We've been following the Brendan.
I'm just wondering, did we know then what we know now about the Dan Reed technique? I mean, had that been able to be brought up here?
Yes, yes, because the actual guy, the company that devised the Reed technique, I believe in one of the training manuals, actually warns about the possibility of false confessions, especially on individuals like Brendan Dassey, who are very highly suggestible. And are you trying to tell me that both Fassbender and Wiegert are experts in dealing with people like Brendan Dassey? I don't think so.
The Dassey case for forever. I've been covering it for about a year now. I remember being down in Portage, waiting to see if Dassey got out of prison. He didn't. The state appealed, and that has led us to here.
We are now ready to hear our case for this morning.
Good morning, and may it please the court. Brendan Dassey confessed because his guilt became unbearable. What he and Avery did to Teresa was horrific. And
What
the
happened
images,
to Teresa was certainly horrific. No one questions the terrible nature of this murder. How could you? But whether Mr. Dassey was responsible for it or whether he just went after the fire was lit is a serious question.
absolutely. The investigators just nudged the confession out of Dassey. They took.
I'm sorry, guys. I was trying to go further. There, Big Jeff nudged. When he said the word nudged, I had to stop the tape. Unbelievable.
Well, the incredulity in the judge's own voice speaks volumes to the bullshit of the word nudge in that context. So it was nudge. You didn't nudge, you know. So it's good. It's good that there's at least one judge. You know, we know the ending. We know he doesn't get a unanimous decision here. You get who you expect, and good on Judge Wood for calling out the bullshit.
Yeah, that was me jumping the gun. I guess I should just let it play out, guys, and she will probably respond for me. So I'll try to do my best not to stop it, but close to smashing my iPad, Dr. Silkman.
Yeah, I'm sort of like I got my hands tied behind my back. Otherwise, I will smash my iPads. But you know, you got to understand that people around the world are watching this, right? And people are obviously hearing our podcast. And it's going to bring back the same feelings of helplessness and anger and frustration. And we got to remember that this occurs all the time. It just didn't occur to Brendan Dassey. This type of crap occurs all the time. Something has to change. It really, really does.
Nudge, really?
Absolutely. They took numerous precautions to protect
What was Mr.
against
Dassey's IQ?
His most recent IQ test was 83 or 81 at trial.
And he was 16 when he was being questioned by the officers?
That's right. He was 16 years old. The Court of Appeals mentioned Dassey's age. They mentioned Dassey's mental capabilities. They quoted the test almost.
Well, if it's true that a state court analysis can be that cursory, or, give no reason at all with just mentioning his age.
It was basing its finding on the trial court's opinion, and the trial court was much more thorough. It went through all of the relevant factors thoroughly. So this idea that it failed to actually consider the totality of the circumstances is outlandish, quite frankly.
Well, no, it's not outlandish at all. Most people who commit murder, dismemberment, and destruction of a corpse don't think they're just going to go back to school and turn in their 6th period project.
Most people, if they saw what Dassey saw, wouldn't have participated.
You see, the judge was able to, in one sentence, sum up the bullshit done by the state, by the investigators on Brendan Dassey in one succinct sentence. That is, a young kid, 16, is going to commit the most heinous of crimes and then just simply go back to normal life, go back to school as if nothing happened. Jeepers, maybe nothing did happen. That might explain his behavior. And remember when he was interviewed by Fassbender and Wiegert, he even asked them, how long is this going to take? Why? Because I've got to hand up a project at a certain time. Now, either Brendan Dassey is completely divorced from reality, or you have to believe him. He made everything up. Come on, guys. If a judge can see through the bullshit, how come Fassbender and Wiegert refused to do the same? I think we all know the reason why.
To me, what I'm getting out of this is that Berg is really trying to argue the process, and he's trying to snowball through the facts. So he's trying to minimize the facts and say, yeah, but Judge, the appeals court had they got the process right. The appeals court went through all that stuff. They didn't mention it all, but they went thoroughly. And that's where I see the difference of these two arguments, where Nyrider is arguing about a false confession fact and saying that not only did the process get wrong, but some details were also wrong. And I'm seeing Berg just trying to plow through those facts and just say the process was done correctly. That's what you should rule on. That's kind of the undertone that I'm getting from it.
Well, what did Brad Schimmel say about Judge Duffin? Wrong on the facts and wrong on the law. This is a judge, and Berg is basically trying to tell the judge exactly the same thing. Well, the totality, in other words, what actually took place in the trial is regarded as the truth, right? So this is a mere sideshow, right? This is sort of like dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Come on, Judge, what are we here for? Brendan already had his day in court, right? So I tell you what, Berg, we have to call him Iceberg, because the judges were dressing him down big time.
Participated.
Well, but I'm just saying, doesn't that tell you that he is just a person who doesn't get it?
I think those statements show, at most, that Dassey doesn't understand how awful it is to rape and murder someone.
Can you give me the fact that they did not feed him?
I think the most telling examples are his memories of Teresa. He remembers her screaming, "Help me," and how she looked, naked and chained up to the bed. He remembered her crying.
But they feed him that. I mean, that's not something that...
They didn't feed him the fact that she was handcuffed to the bed. That was another...
But there's no evidence that she was either. They
found handcuffs in the bedroom.
But they didn't...
Jeff. I don't know. I think we have to stop the podcast, because I'm going to fucking break not only my iPad, I'm going to bust everything in my room. This is shocking, shocking, shocking. It goes to show that someone like Berg has actually not gone through the forensic evidence and clearly does not understand that a fucking cadaver dog went through Stephen Avery's master bedroom and failed to give a hit. And a cadaver dog detects human decomposition. There was no hit, right? Furthermore, the wooden paneling of Stephen Avery's bedroom, the bed itself, the floor was all taken apart, and the handcuffs were examined and swabbed. There was no forensic evidence of Teresa Halbach being inside Stephen Avery's trailer. How the hell Luke Berg somehow conveniently forgot that that actually took place is completely mind-blowing.
Dr. Silkman, isn't it true that on the handcuffs, they did find someone's DNA, not Teresa's or Stephen's?
Correct. There was DNA present, and it wasn't Teresa Horbach's. Now, what is interesting here is that the state were arguing that Stephen had cleaned up his crime scene, and yet quite clearly he failed to remove the DNA that were on the cuffs, and quite clearly that wasn't Teresa Horbach, and he didn't even clean up his own blood, which was present in the bathroom and sink area. So much for forensically cleaning his room, right? So quite clearly he never cleaned anything in his bedroom.
I don't know how much more punishment I can take. I think I've reached my breaking point for this one, guys. I think it's time to get out and give me a break because my blood pressure is rising by the moment here. We need a little breakup. Big Jeff, we're gonna throw it back over to you for wrap-up comments. I'm glad to have you here. I needed some emotional support from all of you. Appreciate yours today, there, Big Jeff. And so we went through a lot. I mean, we were talking about 1985. We talked about Teresa's day planner. We talked about a lot to get to where we are right now in Brendan's case. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, yeah. So, once again, sort of the storyline, of this episode straddles both Stephen and Brendan's story. As Kathleen, just begins to, plows through the evidence to try and determine the truth. And everything that we said earlier, regarding the computer searches and whatnot, it's not meant to denigrate anything that Kathleen Zellner has done or call anybody stupid or even accuse anybody of being guilty of any crime. We just know a little bit more in hindsight, and I certainly appreciate all the research that Kathleen Zellner did to uncover the facts or circumstances that she did in the attempt to prove Stephen Avery, not guilty of this crime. So it's always great to watch her, watch her just dig deeply into the evidence. She really takes the bull by the horns. She addresses things that she sees. Excuse me, and she searches very hard for the truth, and she doesn't care what she uncovers. What she wants is the truth more than anything. And if that truth is that Stephen Avery's guilty, that's fine for her. I think she'd accept that if that's what she actually found. She hasn't found any, and she hasn't found that yet. It's been a lot longer than we've seen in NAM 2. But I think she would accept that if that's what she found. With regard to what we've seen in Brendan, and this is kind of the climax of Brendan's story, or maybe perhaps the anticlimax of Brendan's story in phase MAM 2. It's good to hear, that there are justices, and that's all we've heard so far is the justices on the Fifth Circuit, who are inclined to believe that, the story that the state concocted around Brendan is complete horseshit. It's just, incomprehensible to me that, the inevitable conclusion by not the full trial court, but by most of the trial court, just going to go the other way. I mean, we those of us who have studied this case deeply really understand the level of bullshit that is. There's a couple of questions that Laura Nyrider is going to flub hard, and it's very unfortunate that that's going to happen. But other than that, rather than predict the future of what's going to happen, it's probably best to stick with what we've seen. It's been a good episode, and I look forward to going on to the next episode. So with that, I'll try and be a little bit more coherent. Apologize that I'm a little bit loosey-goosey today. It must be the wine. That's what it is today.
Well, I don't know. It might be the content too. I mean, it might be the wine. That's a good one. It might just be that we've been all over the board too with this episode. It covered a lot of different ground and kind of leaves our head spinning like we just had some wine. Dr. Silkman, if you wouldn't, please give us your summation.
Well, I just want to say that the world order has been restored after hearing Big Jeff's summation. I really love Big Jeff's summations. They're spot on and really accurate. This was a very, very frustrating episode, a very intriguing episode, because we covered some very important and strategic aspects of the case. As you guys know, I'm doing a series with Foul Play, the Reading with the Crew, and we're having a very, very deep dive into what Pam Sturm did that day. And you really, as Big Jeff alluded to, you really need to deep dive into this case. Unfortunately, the more you know, the more frustrated you become, because when you hear someone like Luke Berg talk in the manner that he's talking, it truly is very disingenuous, in my opinion. I really feel that Paul Brendan is just used as a pawn by the state. It's just become a big game of chess, and he's very much a political prisoner, in my opinion. Steve is too. And I think Big Jeff alluded to, it's now the attacking of the process that these judges, or some of these judges, want to protect. Because if Brendan Dassey is ever released, it means that the system failed him. If the system failed Brendan, how many other poor victims are in prison based on the system, right? So again, an incredible episode. We covered quite a lot. Very, very frustrating, and can't wait for the next one. Thank you, guys, and thanks everyone in chat.
Thank you, Dr. Silkman. I couldn't agree more. I appreciate those comments. And Kelly, move over to you. You have the take the responsibility of leading us out of episode 40, the big 4-0. Over the hill, some would say.
Excuse me. How can you top anything that the boys just said? They sum up everything every week.
Kelly, your microphone.
Perfectly.
Oh, you got to start over, Kel. We didn't hear anything.
Is it doing that warm up thing? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry,
okay,
guys.
You're ready, though. We hear you now.
Okay. How can I sum up? How can you top what was just said with the guys? They always sum it up. It's very hard to follow and finish off when everything gets said so perfectly. This episode absolutely was, it felt very all over the place. We addressed all different kind of areas in the case. And like Dr. Silkman said, you really do need a deep dive in each category individually, just to get a sense of feel of every area. That's all I really got. On to the next, and I'll see you all next week.
Absolutely, Kel. Thank you so much. So for Big Jeff, Dr. Silkman, Kel, and Jack at home, this is Jeff Jones saying this is Discussing a Murderer.